Well, good evening. I want to thank you for joining me tonight for ICANN's Facebook Live presentation. My name's John, and tonight we'll be talking about Life After High School, a guide to career and college planning. Now, along with this presentation, there are some materials that hopefully you've downloaded or still can download from our website. You can see the URL in the upper right-hand corner. It's icansucceed.org/materials. So we do have a Life After High School guide, lots of good information in there. We have a Earn as You Learn trades guide, and there's lots of good information about apprenticeship programs and the skilled trades area. And then I have a couple calendars, the freshman, sophomore, as well as a junior, senior calendar. So it's not a requirement that you have these for this presentation. However, there will be some good materials to refer to as you kind of absorb the information in the future. So these are the things I want to talk to you about this evening. We are going to talk a little bit about career exploration. We'll talk a little bit about academic planning, as well as college selection. Lastly, I'm going to talk for just a few minutes about paying for the student's education. Now, there are some things that students can do in high school to explore what their career options are. The first thing we're going to talk about is career assessments. So the feedback I kind of get from some students is they don't really like to take these assessments. I think because it's kind of like a test that they have to take, and maybe they don't necessarily agree with some of the results they get. But if students try to think of these assessments as more of a tool that they can use in order to explore their career options, maybe it'll be a little bit easier on them. What these assessments try to do through a series of questions is they try to figure out what are the things that a student is good at, what are the things that a student likes to do, and what are the student's values. And they try to relate that to different careers. So once the student takes the assessment, they can explore these different career areas. They can find out, well, if I went into that career, what would my day be like? Would I be working with people? Would I be working by myself? Would I be working indoors or out of doors? How much could I expect to earn per year if I go into that career? Could I expect to earn $40,000 a year, or could I expect to earn $140,000 a year? They could find out, what kind of education do I need? Maybe I need a 4-year degree to go into that career. Maybe I need a doctorate. Maybe I go into that career with an apprenticeship program, which is kind of like on-the-job training. So if students try to think about these assessments as more of a tool they can use, I think they'll find that it'll really be helpful in exploring their career options. You know, if you think about it, if we all had a career that we like to do, if we all had a career that we're good at, and if we all had a career that went along with our values, like, I don't know, making a lot of money, for example, then everyone would have it made. Now, every high school uses a career assessment. There's different assessments that different high schools might use. We at ICANN kind of like to use something called myact.org. Students can go there. It doesn't have to be with an ICANN advisor. They can go there on their own, create an account if they don't already have an ACT account, and explore careers with this assessment. We like the assessment because it's a little bit shorter and it's kind of easy to use. The results that you get back are kind of straightforward and kind of easy to navigate. Now, another thing that students can do while they're in high school to explore careers is do some job shadowing. You know, especially if a student thinks they know what career they want to go and job shadow someone working in that field. Maybe it'll kind of solidify the fact that yes, that's really what they want to do. Maybe it'll open their eyes a little bit and they'll say, oh, I didn't know that's what they do all day in that career. Maybe I don't want to go into that field. So use your high school years to kind of see what's out there and get an idea of what these different careers entail. Now, what I'm showing on the screen would be some more, I guess, what we would call organized ways of trying to set up a job shadow. But you don't have to use these. You could maybe talk to someone in your community, whether it's a friend or relative or just someone you know that's working in the field that you're interested in. Talk to these people about, why did you choose the career you're going into? What do you like about that career? Maybe more importantly, what do you dislike about that career? You could ask them about the education that they need to go into these areas. Now, I think especially if a person enjoys their job and like what they're doing, they would be more than willing to talk to a student just to give them an idea of what their career is like. You know, unfortunately, finding a career is not as easy as doing an assessment and doing a job shadow and boom, the student automatically knows what they want to go into. As students experience life throughout their high school years, just try to figure out what they're good at, what they like to do, and how that can relate to different careers. And when I say experiencing life throughout high school, I'm not just talking about life in the classroom. It could be belonging to different clubs, organizations, working part-time. All those things can kind of help a student decide what career they want to go into. The other thing I'll mention is it would be somewhat unrealistic for every student to know exactly what they want to do by the time they leave high school. However, by doing some of these things, hopefully it'll kind of set them on a certain pathway and guide them towards their ultimate career. Now, we want to talk a little bit now about preparing academically in high school. So hopefully, students have sat down with their counselors at the beginning of their high school years and set up what we call a 4-year plan. Now, this 4-year plan has a couple different things that it does. The first thing it does is it makes sure that the student is doing everything they need to do in high school in order to graduate. That would be the most important thing, regardless of what their plans are, is to make sure they're on track to graduate. The other thing this 4-year plan can do is it can help the student do things in high school that would help them reach their goals once they do graduate. Maybe a student's goal is to go to a 4-year college or university. So there are certain classes that students should take in high school in order to make that happen. Maybe they want to go into more of a skilled trades area once they leave high school, so they could take more building trades and things like that while they're in high school. Don't be afraid to sit down with your counselor at least once a year and more if necessary in order to change these plans, kind of tweak them a little bit as possibly your goals change for once you leave high school. Now, this page shows you the different things that colleges and universities will look at in determining if a student is eligible for admissions or not. So we're going to talk a little bit about grades, we'll talk a little bit about test scores, and we'll also talk a little bit about classes that students should be taking while they're in high school. Now, this chart shows you 3 different students, and it shows their grade point average every year of high school, freshman through senior. And on the right-hand side, it shows their cumulative grade point average once they graduate. Now, that student on the top, they did so-so the first couple of years of high school. They got between a C and a B with a 2.5. And then they kind of buckled down a little bit those last 2 years. But you can see that because of those first 2 years where the student could have done a little bit better, that cumulative stayed below a B average. That student in the middle did very well the first 3 years of high school, straight B's, a B plus. Then they kind of slacked off a little bit that senior year, ended up with just below a 2, well, they ended up with a 2.94, still below a 3.0. That student on the bottom did very well all 4 years of high school, 3.5, 3.75 straight A's, and you can see how that reflects on the right-hand side. So a couple things I want to mention about this. First of all, I know that there's a lot of pressure probably to get good grades. And I want to let you know that grades are important. However, grades aren't the only thing that colleges and universities, as well as future employers, will look at. It is important, but keep in mind there's other things that they'll look at as well. If you have a bad year or two while you're in high school where you could have done a little bit better, please don't think that that means you can't go to college, because you certainly can. But obviously you want to do the very best that you can all 4 years of high school. Now, this chart shows you what's recommended that a student take for core subject area classes in order for what we call optimum college preparation. Now, notice it says 4 years for most of these core subject area classes. Now, that doesn't mean that every college requires 4 years in order to get in, nor does it mean that every student needs to take 4 years of these classes in order to graduate from high school. But what it means is that regardless of where a student's looking at going, or regardless of what their plans are, ideally they would take these core subject area classes. Now, this would prepare them for college, but it would also allow them to learn the skills that future employers are looking for. Good communication skills, good problem solving skills, good math skills. And it turns out that even the military is looking for students with those skills as well. So keep your options open. I would take as many of these core subject area classes as you can. Now, sometimes in high school, students will have the opportunity to take classes where they can actually get college credit for those classes. Now, if a student is ready, and not every student is ready for these classes when they're in high school, but if they are, I would suggest they take advantage of these opportunities. So for one thing, it would show that the student is serious about their education. They're not just going through the motion and taking just what they need to graduate, but they're trying to go a little bit above and beyond. But also, this can help the student save a little bit of money. College is expensive. And if a student takes a class or two or three or four in high school, let the high school pay for those classes, they could save several $1,000s. Whereas if they waited till after the high school to take the class, either they would have to pay for it out of their pocket, maybe the parents would pay for it, or worse yet, they would have to borrow a student loan that they would have to pay back 10 years later with interest. So if you're ready, and keep in contact with your counselor as well as your instructors, if you're ready, I would suggest you take advantage of these opportunities. Now we're going to talk a little bit about entrance exams, and this is just a little bit different to talk about ever since COVID happened. Prior to COVID, if a student was looking at going to a four-year college or university, they would be required to take either the ACT or the SAT. These exams are used for entrance purposes, but they can also be used for scholarship purposes. Now, after COVID, though, a lot of colleges and universities are going what we call ACT flexible. And what that means is they may not require it for admissions. Now, we will talk in a moment a little bit more about that, but I also want to mention that if a student's looking at going to a two-year college, a community college, they won't need to take the ACT. They can take it, but they don't have to. But the college will have them take something called an Accuplacer or an asset. They want to find out what the knowledge level is of the student. Now, to find out if the college or colleges you're looking at require the ACT, I would strongly suggest you contact them because sometimes these things are changing as we go through the years. Now, keep in mind, though, like I started to mention, that the ACT is not just for admissions, but it could also be used for scholarships. So even though a college doesn't require the ACT, maybe it's required for some of the scholarships that they offer, or maybe certain colleges within the university requires the ACT, like the College of Education, for example, or the College of Engineering within a university. So my suggestion would be to take the ACT somewhat towards the end of your junior year. Then you can always retake it later if you want to. But again, keep in contact with the college or colleges that you're interested in going to. So another important thing for looking at colleges is to be involved outside of the classroom. Yes, colleges will look at your grades, they'll look at your test scores possibly, they'll look at what classes you took, but some colleges put a lot of weight on this right here, and that's what you're doing outside of the classroom. So it is important that students are involved in clubs, extracurricular activities, sports, band, maybe working part-time off campus. All those things can help you get into a college, but it can also help you apply for scholarships and help you get scholarships to pay for college. Now, believe it or not, while students are involved in these different things, they're learning a lot of good skills, skills that future employers will be looking for as well. Again, like teamwork and leadership skills, time management, and those kinds of things. So all these things are important, regardless of what a student's goals are. So we're going to talk now a little bit about just what the students' education and training options are once they leave high school. So the times have kind of changed just a little bit since I was in high school. And I know, by the way, this says back in 1973. Just for the record, I'll let you know that I was not in high school in 1973. But when I was in high school, probably about 30% of all the careers required some kind of education or training beyond high school. Now, for students in high school, it's closer to 70%. Now, that doesn't mean that every career that students are looking at do require some kind of education or training, but even if a career doesn't require it to get into that career, if a person ever wants to advance or be promoted, it's usually going to entail some additional education. So just some things to kind of keep in mind as you're kind of going through and doing your exploration in high school. So these are the education and training options that students have. They can go into an apprenticeship, which is kind of like on-the-job training, and in a moment I'll talk a little bit more detail about that. They can go into a certificate or a diploma program from 3 months to a year. Maybe they want to be a certified nursing assistant, for example, or a truck driving program where they learn those specific skills. they graduate and they go into the workforce once they graduate. Now, an associate degree is broken into two different kinds. There's kind of what we call a vocational technical degree, where a student goes into a hands-on type program where they learn those skills. And some of those programs could include something like dental hygiene or nursing, welding could be one, automotive maintenance or auto body. Again, usually very hands-on type programs where they learn those skills, graduate, and join the workforce. Or a student could go to a community college for a year or two with the idea of transferring on to a four-year college or university. On the right-hand side, you'll notice there's bachelor's degrees, there's master's degrees, doctorate, and there's also the military. So as you can tell from all these different choices, it's not a one size fits all option. In other words, not every student needs a four-year degree. Some programs or some careers students can go into with other types of levels of education. So ideally, what a student would do is try to figure out kind of their career pathway. What are they looking at for a career? And then based on that, decide, okay, what kind of education do I need? Do I have to have that four-year degree? Maybe I go into that career with a certificate or diploma program. So ideally, you choose kind of the career and then decide what kind of education you need. So this slide basically says that getting an education is essential. We talked about that, but not everybody has to get that four-year degree. Now, it turns out that right now across the country and in the state of Iowa, there's kind of a high demand for people going into what we call the skilled trades area. And these are usually different types of I guess, careers that a student would not need to get a four-year degree in. And again, there's very high need. Now, I don't pretend to know everything about all these different employment trade options, but I do know that for the most part, you don't need to have a four-year degree to go into these different careers. So again, people are different. Some people want to get that four-year degree. Some people want to go into an apprenticeship where they work with someone, learn those skills, and there's usually some education that goes along with that. Once they've learned those skills, they become certified in these areas. So just not trying to push you a certain way, just want you to let you know that you should kind of keep your options open. So let's talk a little bit now about applying for college. So usually during the student's sophomore and junior years, they would focus on all the things we've been talking about, but then start to look at some different colleges. Talk to representatives that come to the high school, do some campus visits, kind of start to narrow down what you're looking for in a college based on all the information that you're learning. During the senior year, we kind of indicated about finishing high school strong, especially with those grades. Kind of start to narrow down a little bit the colleges you're looking at. And then usually a student would be applying for admissions during about, August, September, October of their senior year. Keep in mind that some colleges might have fees to apply for admissions. Sometimes those fees can be waived. So always keep in contact with the college, set foot on those campuses, do those campus visits, and kind of make your comparisons. So you can't talk for very long, at least, about getting an education without at least thinking about how much is it going to cost to go to college and what kinds of programs are out there to help me offset the cost of education. So the most important thing that a student needs to remember to complete to be considered for most kinds of financial aid is to fill out something called the FAFSA, or the Free Application for Federal Student Aid. Now, the earliest that a student can fill this form out would be during the fall of their senior year. Now, last year and this year are kind of different years with the Department of Education. The FAFSA has been delayed a little bit this year. In 2024, it's delayed until December 1st for high school seniors. Usually it's around October 1st would be the earliest. But you go to this website, it's a Department of Education website, and you automatically apply for federal grants. That's money you don't pay back. You automatically apply for most state grants. Again, money you don't pay back. Some colleges might want to see the results of this application before they offer you money out of their own pocket, and a few private scholarships might as well. This application is not a loan application, but in order for students and parents to access educational loans, you have to go through this process first. So I suggest every student complete this free application for federal student aid during the fall of the student's senior year. Another way to help pay for college is doing this right here, and that's save, save, save. So sometimes I think parents think, well, if my son or daughter saves money for college, we won't get that much financial aid. Well, the way I look at it is if a student saves money for college, whether it's from working, whether it's from gifts from family, whether it's through education savings plans, any money they save to pay for college is probably money they won't have to borrow in a student loan and then pay back 10 years later with interest. Now, another way to help pay for college is to apply for what we call private scholarships. Now, for the most part, private scholarships would be made available to seniors, high school seniors, during the fall and spring. There's a few out there for juniors, not many, so it's mainly for seniors. But they can come from a number of different sources. I would suggest checking with your school counselor. They get lots of information from the local community or from around the country even. Check with your employers for you parents. You know, grandparents might belong to certain clubs or parents might belong to certain organizations. It can be kind of a lot of work to apply for scholarships, but it can pay off. My line, I guess, is that I can't guarantee a student will get a scholarship if they apply, but I can certainly guarantee they won't get one if they don't apply. So my last slide for this presentation is the free places you can go to for help. A couple times throughout the presentation, I mentioned talking to the school counselor. Excellent resource, especially for the students going to school throughout the day. So please feel free to contact them. Don't be afraid to contact the college admission or financial aid office. Excellent resources for the students, especially going to for the students. Um, a lot of these things are specific to colleges and universities, so don't be afraid to ask them. Of course, you can always contact us at ICANN. Everything we do is for free. You can call and set up an appointment, or you can set up an appointment on our website. We'd be happy to sit down and talk to you about some of these things. So please feel free to reach out. So I do want to thank you for joining me this evening with this for this presentation. Um, and don't be afraid to reach out to ICANN if you have questions. Thank you very much.